Welcome back to America Decides. President Trump unveiled his budget plan for the 2026 fiscal year today. It proposes $163 billion in cuts to a number of key programs. One notable exception, though, is defense spending, which he wants to boost to over $1 trillion. Let's bring in our reporter panel. Juliegrace Brufke is a congressional correspondent for 24/7 News, and Andrew Solender is congressional reporter for Axios. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Juliegrace, what does this budget tell us about the president's priorities for the upcoming year? Because he's already cut a lot, but he wants to cut more.
So, I mean, I've talked to a number of Republicans, and defense has long been a huge priority for them. So definitely the defense hawks with military preparedness is kind of a huge issue. So there's definitely been a lot of applause on that end.
I think it's a 13% increase in defense spending. That's huge.
So, I mean, there are, however, with some of the cuts to state, some concerns from moderate Republicans, particularly in the Senate side. They're concerned about, despite the defense boost there, that they do have some national security concerns. So we heard from Susan Collins today. So it could have an uphill battle in the upper chamber.
Andrew, you've been focusing on this fight for a very key Democratic position that has suddenly become vacant. What have you learned?
So this is turning into another proxy battle between younger and older Democrats. What we're seeing is folks like Jasmine Crockett lining up and saying pretty loudly, you know, I want this position. On the other end,
and this is for which position?
This is the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, which is, you know, obviously
very high profile.
Yes, you know, this committee is coming up more and more in recent years. It played a big role in the Biden investigations into his family finances and in impeachment. It's made some stars out of some low-key members of Congress. So, you know, leading that panel is definitely a good opportunity for any member.
Especially if Democrats retake the House.
Yep, that's right.
Election.
It'll definitely be the clearinghouse, I think, for a lot of investigations into the Trump administration. And every day that goes by, you see another potential investigation come up.
So as an older member, Jerry Connolly, who is stepping aside for health reasons, and now you've got a lot of younger members saying, hey, you really need somebody who is the face of the party going forward to have this high-profile role.
Right. And to the Democratic base, that seems like a given, but members of Congress operate a little differently, and this is sort of the bigger frustration we're seeing right now between Democratic lawmakers and their voters, where members are very relationship-driven. The chamber really operates on this seniority system that I think a lot of people outside Congress don't understand. And so Stephen Lynch, who's 70 years old, he is a pretty low-key member, came in as a moderate, was, you know, not very progressive on things like abortion, and that has rubbed a lot of the progressive base the wrong way. But he's the third most senior member on the committee, and there are some members who simply say, as a reflex, he's waited his turn. He has been here for decades now. It's his chance. And what we're seeing, though, is more and more members kind of getting buffeted at town halls by people saying, you guys don't put up enough of a fight against Trump. We need young people. We need tough people. We need pugilists who are willing to really, you know, stick it to the administration. And that's where AOC sort of comes in, or Jasmine Crockett. These are stars among the Democratic base. And there's a lot of members saying, I don't think we can afford to put another septuagenarian in one of these roles just because it's their turn.
Speaking of high-profile roles, Juliegrace, you had some really interesting reporting just in the past 24 hours about how House Republicans are thinking about the sudden departure of Mike Waltz from his position as the National Security Advisor, including someone who told you, well, he wasn't necessarily up for that job anyway. He didn't have the chops.
So definitely a whirlwind day yesterday, and I spoke to a number of members that kind of felt like he was in over their head and could have been more communicative with key issues that they were kind of trying to raise to him there, but feel that he's a much better fit at the UN. So there's kind of not been a ton of pushback from House Republicans on that front, but I mean, with Elise Stefanik previously being nominated in that role, I have heard from a number of people that have said they feel that the whole Signalgate scandal is going to be a huge issue for Mike Waltz, and that she was kind of going to have one of the cleanest paths to confirmation there, and that it could be a huge issue for him and an opportunity for Democrats to kind of seize on that scandal, which has been great messaging for them.
Right, because now that he's going to have to go through a confirmation process, Democrats in the Senate are obviously going to bring up Signalgate in a very high-profile way at that hearing.
For sure. And, you know, the immediate reaction you saw from Democrats to Waltz's firing is they feel that they drew a little blood here and they want more. Democrats have been calling for Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, to be fired, to step aside voluntarily. Obviously, he's almost definitely not going to do that. And the more that they call for that, the more the administration digs in, circles the wagon, so to speak, and protects their own. But, you know, as my colleagues Mark Caputo and Barack Ravid reported, they wanted Mike Waltz out anyway. He has been on the bad side of a lot of key people, both in and outside the administration, for a long time. And it was just a matter of time. But they waited until the sort of first Signalgate blowup to push him aside and put him into a softer, more diplomatic role, because they didn't want to make it seem like Democrats were the ones making this happen.
Another fascinating week in Washington. Andrew Solender, Juliegrace Brufke, thank you both so much. Appreciate it.